there's time left in your life to connect with your dad. Now, I don't know what the percentage is, but there's a good chunk of adult, we used to be kids, but now adults who have lost complete connection to their dad. Generally, it's because of the behavior of the father. I think it's somewhat more difficult for men not to act up than women. Women are much better people than men. I've known that my whole life. It's more difficult to be a woman than a man, but women don't act up as much as men do, and men act up. And I had a father named William D. Cunningham Sr. I'm William D. Cunningham Jr., as you may know, who acted up for most of my youth. I last saw him when I was about 14 years old, and some years before that, he produced 4 great kids, my brother John, me, my younger brother Patrick, Graham Cunningham, and my sister Mary Diane Redden, who I'm still very, very close to. And alcoholism was rampant. I was able to see at a young age the effects of alcoholism. It wasn't positive. My dad came back from the Great War in 1945-46, had jobs at Kroger and Procter & Gamble, etc. He could not hold work, had a terrible alcohol problem. From that, he was picked up for drunk and disorderly, picked up for DUI, spent time in the Hamilton County Jail, unbeknownst to me. My mother was a living saint who shielded us as much as she could from what was happening in their marriage and our home. But, of course, you can't shield everything. Impossible. We lived at 8558 Huddleston, lived on Camner in Deer Park, then Huddleston, and eventually Wicklow. And push came to shove. I can remember it as if it was yesterday. We're sitting at the kitchen table, small house there on Huddleston in Deer Park. And my mom looked at the 4 of us, and I was about 12 or 13. My older brother would have been 15 or 16. My younger brother about 9 or 10, and my sister about 5 or 6, and said that your dad's not coming back. He's gone. I spoke up and said, Mom, what do you mean Dad's gone? He said, he left. He's gone. We have to make do without him. And so there was some gnashing of teeth. What do you mean gone? He left with us financially, completely devastated, had no money. At that point, I had gone to Muller High School for 1 year. We owed $150 in tuition. It wasn't paid. And Brother Everslage, who was the principal, sent a letter to my mother saying that unless you pay the $150 that's due, plus $150 for next year, you can't come back to Muller. That's me. And so push came to shove. We had to move in with family members. Literally had no money. In fact, upside down with money, the opposite of money. We had no money and no car. And my mother had an 8th grade education. And an aunt took us in as her family. Her name was Annette Combs, and then later Annette Arlinghouse, and she was also a living saint. So we got on with life. I played sports. My younger brother played sports. My sister, my mom always said a daughter is a daughter. A son will be a son until he takes a wife, but a daughter will be a daughter all the days of her life. And my younger sister, Mary Diane Redden, is also a living saint. So anyway, we got on with life. I went to Deer Park High School, which is a great success for me. I was pretty good in sports at Muller. I didn't stand out much than the other players there, but at Deer Park, shall I say, I stood out. I played basketball. I got a basketball scholarship to Muskingum College and later a baseball scholarship to Xavier, and did my thing. My older brother went to Michigan State. My younger brother got great work at Drackett and Procter & Gamble, did quite well. And my younger sister eventually married and stayed at one company for 29 to 30 years. The years roll by, and I'm standing in my kitchen in Toledo. I'd gone through law school, had my Juris Doctorate degree, and the phone rings. I pick it up. The first voice is, Billy, this is your father. And it had been many, many, many years since I heard his voice, maybe 15 years. And I said, who? He said, this is your father. And I said, how do I know you're my dad? He said, what do you mean? I said, well, who was your assistant coach for Rutter's Pharmacy? He came up with a name quickly. I said, what is the maiden name of my mom and your wife? He came up with that. I said, okay, what do you want? He said, Billy, I'm dying. I'm in Missouri. I'm dying of cancer. I don't have long to live. I want to see you before I die. I want to see you. And I said, let me have your number. I put the phone down, talked to Penny. What do you think? My first thing Penny did, being the way she is, you ought to go to your dad. I said, I can't. Called him back and said, look, You were not a father to me in my life, and I will not be a son to you in your death. I wish you well. Get on with life. And then called my mom quickly. It was in Cincinnati. I still was in Toledo at this point. I said, Mom, you can't believe who called me. And she said, I know, it was your dad. I said, really? He called here to get your number. He wanted to talk with you. He wants to see you. And I told her what happened. She said, Billy, it's your decision. I understand. So about another 6 months goes by. And I debate whether to go and see him. Do I not see him? I said, no, I'm good with it. At that point, we were working. Penny was working 8 to 4 at University of Toledo College as a secretary. I was working first in law school. I worked from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. in court for Judge Robert Franklin. After that, I went to law school. I was very busy, and had no money. And I said, I don't know if I got the gas money to get out to Missouri anyway. So 6 months goes by. He calls me again. And he was sounding even worse. He said, they tell me I have a few days to live. Please come see me. He said, if I could come to see you, I would. I said, Dad, get on with your death. I'm done. No, zero, nothing. Hung up. And at that point, I felt in a sense good about it, but in a sense bad. Should I have gone see him? Could I have gone see him for 200, 300 miles each? But I wasn't going to go. I wasn't going to go. No, I'm not going. Years roll by, years. And now I own Willie's Restaurants. They had one in Kenwood. This would have been like in 20, 25 years ago. And this really old guy came up to me, which thankfully happens a lot, and said, can I talk with you? I said, yeah, what about? He looked at me and said, it's about your dad. I said, about my dad? I said, let's get a table. I went to see him. And he said, I want to give you a letter. And he gave me a letter, which I still have. And I said, well, I'll read the letter, but what is it? He said, your dad was, he was in Guadalcanal and the Solomon Islands, and he was in China. He was a Marine, was in for 3.5 years. He saw things he shouldn't have seen. He did things he shouldn't have done. And when he came home, it's called PTSD now, but it was like a shell shocked at that point. He couldn't get over what he did and what he saw as U.S. Marine. And he got into the bottle. He never got out of the bottle. He felt such shame. I was his best friend. I was your dad's best buddy. And the last thing he wanted was to see his son that was carrying his namesake. He felt really close to you. In fact, you look so much like him. And he really wanted to see you and tell you that he's sorry. He wanted to apologize to you, how embarrassed he was, having left a mother and 4 kids with nothing and never come back again. He felt like the world was over for him, and he wanted to apologize and say he was sorry and explain the reason it happened. It's not an excuse, but he wanted to tell you the reason, that as United States Marine, he did things he shouldn't have done and saw things he shouldn't have seen, and that he wanted to say he was sorry. At that point, I felt about a ½ inch tall. That, my feeling about police, about sheriffs, my feelings about the military. And I should have gone in the living years and sat across the table from him, and I know I would have forgiven him. In fact, every Father's Day, I say a prayer of thankfulness for the man that gave me life and for the man that I hurt in the end. And I ask, and I've received forgiveness for what I did wrong, which was not connecting with my dad during the living years. So today, this Friday afternoon, if you're disconnected from your father, if he's done things he shouldn't have done, if he has said things he shouldn't have said, make one more attempt, one more, for me, to your dad, to say, look, Dad, we're estranged, we don't get along, but I really feel as if I want to get with you and acknowledge the relationship that we've had, and I want to get with you and hear what you have to say, and I will accept your apologies. If you want some from me, I will give you the apologies from me. But please, please connect with your dad before it's too late. One of the regrets of my life, and I've had many, my life is more imperfect than perfect. One of the regrets of my life is not going to see my dad and let him explain to me once again how sorry he is for what he did to me and my family, and that I would accept his apologies. So please, before it's too late, see your dad one more time. And if it takes another time and another time, you're going to feel better in the end, because one of the one of the bad things I've done in my life is have too much hubris, too much manlyhood, too much of a tough guy to sit across from my father as he was dying and let him explain to me what happened. The last image I have of my dad is playing baseball. He was the third base coach of Rutter's Pharmacy, and getting on the bench and talking to my dad. And that's the last image I have. And I hated him for a long time, but I love him now. Bill Cunningham, News Radio 700, WRW.